The wagon rattled to a stop in front of the trading post, and Willa Porter knew her father had finally found a way to be rid of her without the guilt of abandonment weighing on whatever passed for his conscience. She sat in the back of that wagon with her hands folded in her lap, her brown dress dusty from 3 days of travel across the New Mexico territory, and watched through the gap in the canvas as her father jumped down and strode toward the wooden building like a man with purpose. It was May of 1876, and the sun beat down on Placitas with the kind of heat that made the air shimmer and dance above the hard, packed earth. Willa was 20 years old, and in those 20 years, she had learned that Thomas Porter was a man who saw everything and everyone as currency. She had just never imagined he would actually go through with selling his own daughter. The trading post door swung open and her father emerged with another man, this one tall and weathered, with a beard that reached halfway down his chest and eyes that assessed her the way one might assess a horse at auction. Willa felt her stomach turn, but she kept her expression neutral. She had learned long ago not to show fear around men like these. "She is healthy?" the bearded man asked, and her father nodded eagerly. "Strong as an ox, my Willa. Can cook clean, so she will make a fine wife for any man willing to take her on." Wife. The word hung in the air like a noose. Willa wanted to scream that no one had asked her, that she was a person with thoughts and feelings and dreams, but she knew it would do no good. Women did not have much say in such matters, especially not when their fathers were desperate men with gambling debts and a taste for whiskey. The bearded man walked closer to the wagon, and Willa forced herself to meet his gaze. She would not cower. Whatever came next, she would face it with her head high. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice rough as gravel. "Willa Porter, sir," he grunted, then turned back to her father. "I will give you 3 months' worth of supplies, 20 pounds of flour, salt, coffee, sugar, and bacon, plus 1 Winchester rifle with ammunition." Her father's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "That is more than generous, Mr. Hutchins." "She better be worth it," Hutchins said, and Willa felt ice run through her veins. The transaction took less than an hour. Her father did not even say goodbye, simply took his supplies and his rifle, climbed back onto the wagon, and drove away without looking back. Willa stood in the street with nothing but the dress on her back and a small cloth bag containing her mother's Bible and a silver hairbrush, watching the dust cloud grow smaller until it disappeared entirely. "Come on then," Hutchins said, grabbing her arm roughly. "You belong to me now." Willa stumbled after him, her mind racing. She had to find a way out of this, had to think of something, but what could she do? She had no money, no family who cared, and no place to go in this harsh land. Hutchins led her down the main street of Placitas, past the saloon where piano music drifted out into the afternoon air, past the general store and the blacksmith shop, toward a small house at the edge of town that looked like it had seen better days. They were halfway there when a voice called out behind them, "Hutchins, hold up there." Both Willa and Hutchins turned to see a man walking toward them from the direction of the livery stable. He was younger than Hutchins by at least 20 years, probably in his mid-20s, with dark hair that fell to his collar and blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore dusty trail clothes and a gun belt slung low on his hips, and he moved with the easy confidence of a man who knew exactly who he was and what he was capable of. "What do you want, Everett?" Hutchins asked, his tone irritated. The younger man stopped a few feet away, his gaze moving from Hutchins to Willa and back again. "Heard you made yourself a trade up at the post. Heard you traded supplies and a rifle for this young lady here. What of it? It is none of your business what I do." "Well now, that is where you are wrong," the man called Everett said, his voice calm but carrying an edge that made Hutchins tense. "See, I have been needing some help with my ranch, and I've got more supplies and better rifles than what you got. So I am thinking maybe I will make you a counter-offer." Hutchins laughed, a harsh sound that held no humor. "She is already mine, Everett. Deal is done." "Is it?" Everett turned his full attention to Willa, and she found herself caught in the intensity of his gaze. "Madam, has anyone asked you what you want in all this?" The question was so unexpected that Willa could only stare at him for a moment. No one had asked her what she wanted since her mother died 3 years ago. No one had cared. I do not want to be owned by anyone," she said quietly, finding her voice. "I am not property." "Damn right you are not," Everett said, and there was something fierce in his expression that made Willa's heart skip. He turned back to Hutchins. "Here is how this is going to work. I will give you double what you paid for her, and you will walk away and forget this whole thing ever happened." "And if I refuse?" Everett's hand moved to rest casually on the butt of his pistol. "Then I reckon we will have ourselves a problem, and I do not think you want that kind of trouble, do you?" The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Willa held her breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Hutchins was bigger than Everett, older and meaner, but there was something in the younger man's stance that suggested he was not someone to be trifled with. Finally, Hutchins spat into the dust. "Fine, but I want double supplies, double ammunition, and 2 rifles." "Done," Everett said without hesitation. "Meet me at the trading post in an hour and we will settle up." Hutchins shot Willa one last look, something ugly and resentful in his eyes, then turned and stalked away. Willa let out the breath she had been holding, her legs suddenly shaky beneath her. "Thank you," she said, turning to her rescuer. "I do not know what would have happened if you had not stepped in." "Nothing good," Everett said bluntly. He pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his hair, and Willa noticed for the first time that he looked tired, like he had been riding hard for days. "Name is Cole Everett. I have got a ranch about 5 miles outside of town." "Willa Porter," she said, though he probably already knew that. "Are you really going to pay him all those supplies just to get me away from him?" "Already did it in my head," Cole said. "Cannot stand men like Hutchins, treating people like goods to be bought and sold. It is not right." "But now you have paid for me," Willa pointed out, trying to understand this strange turn of events. "Does that not make you the same as him?" Cole's expression softened, and he met her eyes with a directness that made her feel seen in a way she had not been in years. "Miss Porter, I did not buy you. I bought your freedom. Soon as we get this sorted with Hutchins, you are free to go wherever you want, do whatever you please. You do not owe me anything." Willa felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. She had not cried when her father abandoned her, and she would not cry now in front of this stranger, no matter how kind he was being. "I have nowhere to go," she admitted, hating how small her voice sounded. "No money, no family. I do not even know anyone in Placitas." Cole considered this for a moment, his blue eyes thoughtful. "Well, like I said, I do need help at the ranch. If you are willing to work, I can offer you a job. Fair wages, your own room, 3 meals a day, no strings attached. You can leave anytime you want." "Why would you do this for me?" Willa asked, searching his face for some hint of deception, some hidden motive. "You do not even know me." "Because it is the right thing to do," Cole said simply. "And because I know what it is like to feel trapped and powerless. Nobody should have to feel that way." There was a story there Willa could tell, something in the shadows behind his eyes that spoke of past pain. But she did not press. Instead, she nodded slowly. "All right, then. I accept your offer, Mr. Everett. Thank you." "Just Cole," he said, settling his hat back on his head. "Come on. Let us go get this business with Hutchins settled, and then I will take you out to the ranch. Fair warning, though, it is not fancy. Just me and a couple of ranch hands, and the place could use a woman's touch." They walked back toward the trading post together, and Willa found herself studying Cole from the corner of her eye. He was handsome in a rugged sort of way, with strong features and calloused hands that spoke of hard work. More than that, though, there was a kindness in him that she had not expected, a decency that seemed rare in this harsh land. The transaction with Hutchins went smoothly enough, though the older man glared at Willa like she had personally wronged him. Cole paid what he had promised without complaint, and then Hutchins disappeared into the saloon, probably to drink away his anger. Cole arranged for the supplies to be delivered to his ranch the next day, and then he led Willa to where his horse was tied up outside the livery. "You can ride?" he asked, and Willa nodded. "My mother taught me when I was young." "Good. This is Shadow," Cole said, patting the black gelding's neck. "He is gentle enough. I will ride behind you to make sure you do not fall." He helped her up into the saddle, his hands strong and steady, and then he swung up behind her. Willa stiffened at the proximity, unused to being so close to a man, but Cole seemed to sense her discomfort and kept a respectful distance, his arms reaching around her only to hold the reins. They rode out of Placida's as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The land around them was beautiful in its starkness, all rolling hills and scrub brush and distant mountains that seemed to touch the clouds. Willa had spent most of her life in towns and cities, and there was something both frightening and exhilarating about all this open space. "It is beautiful," she said softly, and she felt rather than saw Cole's smile. "It grows on you," he said. "When I first came out here 3 years ago, I thought it was the loneliest place on earth. But now I cannot imagine living anywhere else." "Where did you come from?" Willa asked, curious about this man who had appeared like an answer to a prayer she had not even known she was praying. "Missouri originally," Cole said. "My family had a farm there, but after the war everything fell apart. My father died, my mother remarried, and I decided it was time to make my own way. Came out west looking for a fresh start. Did you find it?" "I am working on it," Cole said, and there was something wistful in his voice. "What about you? Where are you from?" "Ohio originally," Willa said, "but we moved around a lot after my mother died. My father was always chasing the next big opportunity, the next sure thing. It never panned out and his debts just kept growing." "I am sorry," Cole said quietly, "about your mother and about what your father did. No man should treat his daughter that way." Willa felt that prickling behind her eyes again and forced it down. "It does not matter now. That part of my life is over." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the rhythmic sound of Shadow's hooves on the hard ground oddly soothing. As they crested a hill, Cole pointed ahead to where a cluster of buildings sat nestled in a small valley. "There it is," he said. "Home." The ranch was modest but well-maintained, with a small house, a barn, a corral with several horses, and what looked like a bunkhouse for the ranch hands. It was not much, but to Willa it looked like paradise compared to what she had been facing just hours before. As they rode into the yard, 2 men emerged from the barn. One was older, probably in his 50s, with gray hair and a weathered face. The other was younger, maybe 30, with sandy blonde hair and an easy smile. "Boss, you are back," the younger one called out. "We were starting to think you might have run into trouble." "No trouble, just a change of plans," Cole said, dismounting and then helping Willa down. "Miss Porter, these are my ranch hands. The old coot there is Frank Thompson, and the one with the big mouth is Daniel Hayes. Boys, this is Willa Porter. She's going to be helping out around here." Frank nodded at her respectfully, but Daniel's eyes went wide with surprise. "A woman? Since when do we have a woman at the ranch?" "Since today," Cole said firmly. "And you will both treat her with respect, understand?" She has had a rough day." "Yes, sir," both men said in unison, though Daniel still looked curious. Cole led Willa toward the house, a simple structure made of wood and adobe. Inside, it was clean but sparse, with furniture that was functional rather than decorative. There was a main room with a fireplace and a rough-hewn table, a small kitchen area, and 2 doors that presumably led to bedrooms. "The room on the right is mine," Cole said. "The one on the left is yours now. It is not much, but the bed is comfortable and there is a trunk for your things. The bunkhouse is where Frank and Daniel sleep, so you will have your privacy here." Willa looked around, taking it all in. After years of moving from one shabby boarding house to another, this felt like luxury. "It is perfect," she said honestly. "Thank you, Cole." He smiled, and it transformed his whole face, making him look younger and less careworn. "You are welcome. I imagine you are hungry after the day you have had. Let me see what I can scrape together for supper." "I can cook," Willa offered quickly. "You said you needed help around here, and I am good in the kitchen. My mother taught me well." Cole looked like he wanted to argue, but then he nodded. "All right, but only if you are up to it. I will show you where everything is." They worked together in the small kitchen, and Willa found herself relaxing in a way she had not in months. Cole was easy to be around, not demanding or controlling like her father had been, not lecherous like Hutchins. He treated her like a person, asking her opinion on things, making jokes that actually made her laugh. By the time they sat down to eat, Willa felt something she had not expected to feel again: hope. The days that followed fell into a pleasant rhythm. Willa woke early each morning and prepared breakfast for the men, then spent her days cleaning, mending clothes, tending the small vegetable garden behind the house, and preparing meals. It was hard work, but it was honest work, and Cole paid her fairly, just as he had promised. More than that, he treated her with a respect that she had rarely experienced. Cole himself was gone most days, working the ranch with Frank and Daniel. They ran cattle on the land, and in the evenings Cole would often come back tired and dusty, but he always had a smile for Willa and a kind word. She found herself looking forward to those evening meals when they would all sit around the table and talk about the day, sharing stories and laughter. One evening, about 2 weeks after Willa had arrived, she and Cole were sitting on the porch after supper, watching the sun set over the mountains. Frank and Daniel had gone to the bunkhouse, and the only sounds were the gentle chirping of crickets and the occasional whinny from the horses in the corral. "Can I ask you something?" Willa said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Anything," Cole replied, leaning back in his chair. "Why did you really help me that day? I know you said it was the right thing to do, but there is more to it than that. I can tell." Cole was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and thoughtful. "My mother," he said. "After my father died, she married a man who seemed kind enough at first. But once they were wed, he changed. He was cruel to her, treated her like property, like she was nothing more than a servant who shared his bed. I was 17 and thought I could protect her, but I was just a kid. When I tried to stand up to him, he beat me nearly senseless and threw me off the property." Willa felt her heart clench at the pain in his voice. "I wandered for a while," Cole continued, "did odd jobs, saved up money. By the time I had enough to go back and get her, she had died. Cholera, they said, but I think it was heartbreak as much as anything. I never got to save her, never got to give her the life she deserved. So when I saw you standing there with Hutchins, looking scared but trying so hard to be brave, I saw her. And I thought, maybe I cannot save my mother, but I can save this one woman. Maybe that can mean something." Willa reached out without thinking and placed her hand over his where it rested on the arm of his chair. "I am so sorry about your mother, Cole, but what you did for me, it means everything. You gave me my life back. Cole turned his hand over so that their palms touched, his fingers curling gently around hers. "You have done more for this place in 2 weeks than I managed in 3 years," he said with a soft smile. "You have made it feel like a home." They sat like that as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, hands clasped, neither one wanting to break the moment. Willa felt something stirring in her chest, something warm and frightening and wonderful all at once. She had not let herself think about falling in love, had not let herself hope for anything beyond survival. But sitting here with Cole, feeling the warmth of his hand in hers and seeing the tenderness in his eyes, she could not help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, she was allowed to want more. The following weeks brought changes to the ranch and to Willa's heart. She found herself thinking about Cole constantly, noticing the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, the strength in his arms when he lifted heavy saddles, the gentleness in his voice when he spoke to the horses. She told herself she was being foolish, that a man like Cole would never be interested in someone like her, but she could not seem to stop her feelings from growing. What she did not know was that Cole was fighting the same battle. He had not expected to fall for Willa, had only wanted to help her, but something about her had gotten under his skin from the very first moment. He loved her quiet strength, the way she never complained about hard work, her quick wit and ready smile. He loved the way she hummed while she cooked, and the way she always saved him the last cup of coffee in the morning. He was falling in love with her, and it terrified him. One afternoon in late June, a storm rolled in across the plains with little warning. Willa was in the garden when the first drops of rain began to fall, large and heavy and cold. She grabbed her basket of vegetables and ran for the house, but the sky opened up before she could reach the door, drenching her in seconds. She burst into the house, laughing despite herself, her hair plastered to her face and her dress clinging to her body. Cole was inside, having come in early to escape the storm, and he turned at her entrance. The laughter died on Willa's lips when she saw the way he was looking at her, his blue eyes dark with something that made her breath catch. "You are soaked," he said, his voice rough. "The storm came on so fast," Willa said, suddenly aware of how inappropriate she must look. "I should go change." "Willa, wait," Cole said, taking a step toward her. "There is something I need to say to you, and if I do not say it now, I might lose my nerve." Willa set down her basket with shaking hands, her heart pounding. "What is it?" Cole crossed the room to stand in front of her, so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "These past weeks with you here have been the happiest of my life," he said. "You have brought light into this place, into my life, and I do not want to imagine it without you. I know I have got no right to ask. I know you have been through hell, and probably the last thing you want is another man complicating your life, but I have to tell you. I am in love with you, Willa Porter. I am completely and totally in love with you." Willa stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. "You love me, with everything I have," Cole said fervently. "And if you do not feel the same way, that is all right. You can still stay here, still work here, and I will never mention it again, but I needed you to know." Willa felt tears streaming down her face, mixing with the rainwater. "Cole Everett, you are the most wonderful, infuriating man I have ever met. Of course I feel the same way. I have been in love with you for weeks now, but I thought you only saw me as hired help." Cole's face broke into the biggest smile Willa had ever seen, and then he was pulling her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. She did not care that she was soaking wet or that she was getting him wet too. All that mattered was that she was here in his arms and he loved her. "Can I kiss you?" Cole asked, pulling back just enough to look at her face. "Please," Willa whispered, and then his lips were on hers. The kiss was everything Willa had never known she wanted. It was gentle and fierce all at once, full of promise and passion. Cole's hands came up to cradle her face, his thumbs brushing away her tears, and Willa wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing closer. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "Marry me," Cole said, the words tumbling out like he could not contain them. "I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other a few weeks, but I do not care. I want you to be my wife, Willa. I want to give you my name and my protection and everything I have." Willa laughed, the sound joyous and free. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you, Cole Everett." They kissed again, and outside the storm raged on, but inside the little ranch house, everything was perfect. They were married a week later by the circuit preacher who came through Placida's once a month. It was a simple ceremony held at the small church on the edge of town, with Frank and Daniel serving as witnesses and a handful of townspeople in attendance. Willa wore a dress that the seamstress in town had helped her alter from a ready-made one, pale blue with white lace at the collar. She had never felt more beautiful. Cole wore his best suit, which was not saying much, but he had shaved and combed his hair, and when he looked at Willa walking down the aisle toward him, his eyes shone with love and pride. They exchanged simple gold bands that Cole had purchased from the general store, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Cole kissed her so tenderly that several of the women in attendance sighed with pleasure. The celebration afterward was held at the saloon, which the owner had agreed to close to the public for a few hours. There was music and dancing and more food than Willa had seen in months. Frank gave a toast that made everyone laugh, and Daniel presented them with a hand-carved picture frame as a wedding gift. Even some of the townspeople who had looked at Willa with suspicion when she first arrived came to offer their congratulations. As the evening wore on and the sky turned purple with twilight, Cole led Willa outside for a moment of quiet. They stood in the street, her hand in his, watching the first stars appear. "Are you happy?" Cole asked softly. "More than I ever thought possible," Willa replied honestly. 2 months ago I thought my life was over, and now I am married to the most wonderful man I have ever known, with a home and a future. It feels like a dream." "If it is a dream, I never want to wake up," Cole said, pulling her close and kissing her forehead. "You are mine now, Willa Everett, and I am yours. Forever." "Forever," Willa echoed, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. They rode back to the ranch under a sky full of stars, and when they arrived, Frank and Daniel had made themselves scarce, giving the newlyweds their privacy. Cole carried Willa over the threshold, both of them laughing, and set her down gently in the main room. "Welcome home, Mrs. Everett," he said, and Willa's heart swelled with joy. That night, as they lay together in Cole's bed, which was now their bed, Willa marveled at the turn her life had taken. She had been sold like cattle, treated as less than human, and now she was loved and cherished by a good man. She traced patterns on Cole's chest, feeling his heart beat steady and strong beneath her fingertips. "What are you thinking about?" Cole asked, his voice drowsy and content. "About how lucky I am," Willa said. "About how you saved me." "We saved each other," Cole corrected gently. "I was just existing before you came along, Willa, going through the motions. You gave me a reason to build something real, to think about the future. You saved me just as much as I saved you." Willa tilted her head up to kiss him, pouring all her love and gratitude into it. Whatever came next, whatever challenges they would face, she knew they would face them together. The months that followed their wedding were full of hard work and happiness. Willa threw herself into making the ranch house a true home, sewing curtains for the windows, planting flowers near the porch, and creating meals that made even the taciturn Frank wax poetic. Cole worked long hours building up the herd and improving the property, but he always made time for his wife, whether it was a quick kiss in the kitchen or long conversations on the porch in the evenings. By August, the ranch was thriving. They had added more cattle and hired another hand, a young man named Peter who was barely 19 but eager to learn. The summer heat was intense, but the cattle were healthy and the grass, though sparse, was enough to keep them fed. Cole had hopes of buying more land before winter came, expanding their operation and securing their future. It was during a trip to Placitas for supplies in September that Willa first heard the news. She was in the general store, selecting flour and sugar when two women came in, their voices high with scandal. "Did you hear about Thomas Porter?" one of them said, not noticing Willa standing just around the corner. "They found him dead outside the saloon in Santa Fe. Killed in a fight over a card game." Willa felt her knees go weak and she had to grip the counter to steady herself. Her father was dead. The man who had sold her, who had abandoned her, was gone from this world. "Willa," Cole appeared at her side, his hand on her elbow. "What is wrong? You look pale." "My father," she said quietly. "He is dead, killed in Santa Fe." Cole's expression darkened, but he kept his voice gentle. "Do you want to go? We can arrange for the body to be brought back, have a proper funeral." Willa shook her head. "No. He stopped being my father the day he traded me away. I do not owe him anything, not even grief." "Are you sure?" Cole asked, searching her face. "I am sure," Willa said firmly. "My life is with you now. The past is dead and buried, and I want to leave it that way." Cole nodded, respecting her decision, and they finished their shopping in silence. But that night, as they lay in bed, Willa found herself crying for reasons she could not fully explain. Cole held her, not saying anything, just being there, and eventually she fell asleep in his arms. In the morning, she woke feeling lighter, as if some weight she had not known she was carrying had been lifted. Her father was gone, and with him went the last tie to her old life. She was Willa Everett now, wife to a good man and mistress of her own destiny. October brought cooler weather and the need to prepare for winter. Cole and the ranch hands worked from dawn to dusk, making sure the cattle were rounded up and the barn was stocked with hay. Willa spent her days preserving vegetables from the garden, mending clothes and blankets, and making sure there was plenty of wood chopped for the fireplace. One evening, as she was preparing supper, Willa felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. She gripped the edge of the table, breathing deeply, and the feeling passed. It had been happening more frequently over the past week, along with a strange queasiness in the mornings. At first she had thought it was something she ate, but now, as she counted back the weeks since her last monthly cycle, realization dawned. She was pregnant. She was going to have a baby. Willa sat down heavily in a chair, her hands going to her still flat stomach. A baby. Cole's baby. Their baby. She felt a rush of emotions. Joy, fear, excitement, worry. They had only been married a few months. Was it too soon? Would Cole be happy? But even as the questions swirled in her mind, Willa knew the answer. Cole would be thrilled. He would be the best father any child could hope for. She told him that night after supper. Frank and Daniel had gone to the bunkhouse, and she and Cole were washing dishes together, a routine they had fallen into. Willa dried a plate, took a deep breath, and said, "Cole, I have something to tell you." He turned to her, soap bubbles on his hands, his expression curious. "What is it?" "I am pregnant," Willa said, watching his face carefully. "We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Cole just stared at her, and Willa felt a flutter of anxiety. Then his face broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen, and he let out a whoop of joy that probably could be heard all the way to town. He grabbed her and spun her around, both of them laughing. "A baby," he said wonderingly, setting her down gently. "We are going to have a baby." Willa, this is the best news, the absolute best news. You are happy? Willa asked, needing to hear him say it. Happy does not even begin to cover it, Cole said, cupping her face in his hands. You have given me everything, Willa. A home, a purpose, love, and now a child. I am the luckiest man alive. They held each other in the kitchen, swaying gently, and Willa felt a peace settle over her. This was her life now. This was her family. And it was more than she had ever dreamed possible. The pregnancy was not easy. Willa suffered from terrible sickness in the first few months, unable to keep much food down. Cole fretted over her constantly, insisting she rest and trying his hand at cooking with disastrous results. Frank finally took over the kitchen duties, grumbling good-naturedly about how he never signed on to be a cook, but producing surprisingly edible meals. By December, the sickness had passed and Willa began to show. Cole was ridiculously excited about the baby, constantly talking to her belly and making plans for the future. He started work on a cradle, carving it carefully from cottonwood in the evenings by lamplight. Willa would sit nearby, sewing tiny clothes and watching him work, feeling so full of love she thought she might burst. Winter settled over New Mexico, bringing cold winds and occasional snow. The ranch hands kept the cattle as safe as possible, but they lost a few head to the harsh weather. It was difficult, but they had prepared well, and they had enough supplies to see them through until spring. On Christmas Eve, Willa and Cole bundled up and walked out to look at the stars, something they had taken to doing on clear nights. The air was crisp and cold, their breath forming white clouds, but the sky was spectacular, filled with more stars than seemed possible. Next Christmas, we will have a baby, Cole said, his arm around Willa's shoulders. Our child will be here and we will be a real family. We are already a real family, Willa said, leaning into him. But I know what you mean. I cannot wait to meet our little one. Do you hope for a boy or a girl? Cole asked. I do not care, Willa said honestly. As long as the baby is healthy, I will be happy. What about you? Same, Cole said. Though I will admit, the thought of a little boy to teach about ranching and horses is appealing. But a little girl with your eyes and your spirit would be perfect too. They stood there until the cold drove them back inside, and then they sat by the fire, drinking hot cider and talking about their hopes and dreams for the future. The new year of 1877 brought more snow and cold, but also a growing sense of anticipation. Willa's belly grew rounder, and by February she could feel the baby moving inside her, little flutters that made her laugh with delight. Cole insisted on feeling every kick, pressing his hand to her stomach with wonder on his face. Strong little thing, he would say proudly. That is my child, all right. In March, as the weather began to warm and the snow melted, Cole made the decision to send for a midwife from Santa Fe. The midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Rodriguez, arrived in early April and declared that Willa was healthy and the baby would likely come in late April or early May. Your first? Mrs. Rodriguez asked, and Willa nodded. Do not worry, child. You are young and strong. You will do fine. Still, as her due date approached, Willa found herself increasingly nervous. She had heard stories of women dying in childbirth, of babies born too early or too weak to survive. What if something went wrong? What if she lost the baby, or worse, what if Cole lost them both? Cole seemed to sense her fear, and one evening he sat her down and took both her hands in his. Listen to me, he said seriously. I know you are scared. I am scared too, but you are the strongest woman I know, Willa. You survived things that would have broken most people. You are going to get through this, and our baby is going to be perfect, and we are going to have a wonderful life together. Do you hear me? Willa nodded, tears streaming down her face. I love you so much, Cole Everett. "I love you too," he said, pulling her into his arms. "More than anything in this world." The baby came on a warm afternoon in late April, 2 weeks earlier than expected. Willa had been hanging laundry when the pains started, sharp and insistent. She barely made it back to the house before her water broke, and then things happened very fast. Mrs. Rodriguez was there, having stayed at the ranch for the past week, and she took charge immediately. Cole was banished to the main room, where he paced like a caged animal, listening to Willa's cries with his heart in his throat. Frank and Daniel had made themselves scarce, riding out to check the far pastures, but Cole could not leave. He needed to be there, even if he could not be in the room with her. The labor lasted 6 hours, which Mrs. Rodriguez said was actually quite good for a first baby. But to Cole, listening to Willa's pain, it felt like an eternity. He prayed more in those 6 hours than he had in his entire life, making bargains with God, promising anything if Willa and the baby would just be all right. Finally, just as the sun was beginning to set, he heard it, the thin, angry wail of a newborn baby. Cole's knees nearly gave out with relief. A moment later, Mrs. Rodriguez opened the bedroom door, a smile on her face. "You have a son," she said, "a healthy baby boy. And your wife is tired but doing well. You can come in now." Cole did not remember crossing the room. One moment he was in the doorway, the next he was kneeling beside the bed where Willa lay, pale and exhausted but smiling. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in a blanket, and when Cole looked down he saw the most beautiful sight he had ever seen. His son, red-faced and squalling, with a shock of dark hair and tiny fists waving in the air. "Cole, meet your son," Willa said softly, her voice hoarse. "We have a son." Cole reached out with a trembling hand and touched the baby's cheek, marveling at how soft the skin was. The baby's eyes opened, dark blue like all newborns, and seemed to look right at him. "He is perfect," Cole whispered. "You did so well, Willa. You were so brave. He is absolutely perfect." "What should we name him?" Willa asked. They had discussed names over the past few months, but had never settled on anything definite. Now, looking at his son, Cole thought about all the people who had shaped his life, and one name stood out. "What about James?" he suggested. "James Robert Everett." "We can call him Jamie." Willa smiled. "Jamie, I love it. Hello, Jamie. Welcome to the world." Mrs. Rodriguez showed them how to care for the baby, how to swaddle him properly and help him nurse. She stayed for another week to make sure Willa recovered well and that Jamie was thriving. Both mother and baby did wonderfully, and by the time Mrs. Rodriguez left, Willa was up and moving around, though still tired. Cole was besotted with his son. He would hold Jamie for hours, just staring at him in wonder, talking to him about the ranch and the horses and how much he loved him. Willa would watch them together, her 2 boys, and feel such overwhelming love that it brought tears to her eyes. Frank and Daniel were equally charmed by the baby, though they tried to act tough. Frank whittled a set of wooden animals for the baby, and Daniel presented them with a tiny pair of leather boots that Jamie would not be able to wear for months, but that were adorable nonetheless. The rest of the spring and summer passed in a blur of sleepless nights and overwhelming joy. Jamie was a good baby, relatively calm, though he had a pair of lungs on him when he wanted something. Willa adjusted to motherhood with the same determination she brought to everything else, and Cole proved to be a devoted father. By the time Jamie was 3 months old, they had settled into a comfortable routine. Willa would nurse him in the early morning, then strap him to her chest in a sling while she worked around the house. Cole would come in throughout the day to check on them, always with a smile for his son. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch as a family, watching the sunset and talking about the future. "I want more," Cole said one evening in August, Jamie asleep in his arms. More children, I mean. I want to fill this house with kids and laughter, if that is what you want too, of course. Willa smiled. I want that too. I always dreamed of having a big family, but I thought that dream was dead. Now, though, I think we can have everything we ever wanted. We already do, Cole said, leaning over to kiss her. But I am greedy. I want even more happiness, more love, more of you and me and this life we are building. Then we will have it, Willa said confidently. Together we can have it all. The years that followed were full and rich. Jamie grew into a sturdy, curious toddler with his father's blue eyes and his mother's determination. When he was 2, Willa became pregnant again, and this time the pregnancy was easier, her body knowing what to expect. She gave birth to a daughter in the spring of 1879, a beautiful little girl they named Catherine, or Katie for short. Cole was just as devoted to his daughter as he was to his son, though he joked that having a little girl made him more nervous than facing down a stampede. Katie was a daddy's girl from the start, wrapping her tiny fingers around his and owning his heart completely. The ranch continued to prosper. They had expanded their land and their herd, and Cole had built a reputation as an honest, fair man who did business the right way. Other ranchers respected him, and people in Placitas always greeted him and his family warmly when they came to town. Willa had become friends with several of the women in town, particularly the seamstress, Margaret, who had helped her with her wedding dress. The 2 women would sometimes meet for tea, bringing their children to play together, and Willa marveled at how much her life had changed. She was no longer alone and afraid. She was loved and respected, with a family and a community. When Jamie was 4 and Katie was 2, Willa discovered she was pregnant again. This time, Cole just laughed and spun her around, both of them delighted. They welcomed another son in the spring of 1881, a boy they named Samuel but called Sam from the start. Sam was the most laid-back of their children, content to observe the world with solemn eyes and rarely crying. 3 children kept Willa busy, but she would not have traded it for anything. Their home was filled with laughter and noise and the kinds of chaos that comes with young children. Cole had expanded the house, adding on 2 more bedrooms so each child could have their own space as they grew. Frank and Daniel, who had been with them since the beginning, were like uncles to the children. Frank taught Jamie to whittle, and Daniel let Katie ride on his shoulders while he did his chores. When Sam was born, both men joked about how Cole was trying to build his own ranch crew from scratch. One evening in the fall of 1882, when Jamie was 5, Katie was 3, and Sam was 1, the whole family was sitting on the porch watching the sunset. The children were tired from a day of playing, and Katie had fallen asleep in Cole's lap while Sam dozed in Willa's arms. Only Jamie was still awake, asking questions about the stars that were beginning to appear. "Mama, how many stars are there?" Jamie asked, his young voice full of wonder. "More than anyone could ever count," Willa said, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "Papa, will we always live here?" Jamie asked, turning to Cole. "As long as you want to, son," Cole said. "This is our home, our land. Someday it will be yours and your brothers and your sisters. The Everett Ranch will be here for generations." "I like that," Jamie said, snuggling closer to his father. "I want to be a rancher like you when I grow up." Cole caught Willa's eye over the children's heads and they shared a smile. This was what they had built together, a legacy of love and land, a family that would endure. "What are you thinking about?" Cole asked Willa later that night, after the children were all tucked into bed and they were finally alone. "About how far we have come," Willa said, settling into his arms. 7 years ago, I was traded for supplies and a rifle, treated like I was worth nothing. And now look at us. We have this beautiful family, this wonderful life. Sometimes I still cannot believe it is real." "It is real," Cole said, kissing the top of her head. "And you were always worth everything, Willa. Your father was a fool who could not see what he had, but I saw. From the first moment, I saw you standing there trying so hard to be brave. I saw exactly who you were. You were strong and beautiful and deserving of so much more than you had been given. That is why I had to help you. That is why I fell in love with you." "You gave me freedom," Willa said, tears in her eyes. "You gave me your name and your love and this incredible life. How do I ever thank you for that?" "You do not need to thank me," Cole said. "You gave me just as much, probably more. You gave me a reason to build something lasting, a family to love, a home that feels full and warm and alive. We saved each other, remember? We have been saving each other every day since." Willa turned in his arms and kissed him, pouring 7 years of love and gratitude into it. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "I love you, Cole Everett," Willa said, "forever and always." "Forever and always," Cole echoed. "That is a promise I intend to keep." The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and challenges. There were hard winters and dry summers, cattle that got sick and fences that needed mending. But through it all, Cole and Willa faced everything together, their love growing deeper with each passing year. Jamie grew into a young man who was the spitting image of his father, with the same strong features and quiet confidence. He loved the ranch life and was already helping with the cattle by the time he was 10. Katie was a spirited girl who loved horses and had her father wrapped around her finger. Sam was thoughtful and gentle, with a gift for working with animals that amazed everyone. In 1885, Willa gave birth to their 4th child, another daughter they named Lily. She was tiny and delicate, born a month early, and for a few scary days they were not sure she would make it. But Lily proved to be a fighter, and with careful nursing from Willa and prayers from everyone who loved her, she pulled through. Cole said she got her fighting spirit from her mother, and Willa could not disagree. By 1887, the Everett Ranch was one of the most successful in the territory. Cole had hired more hands and built a larger barn and a new bunkhouse. They had become pillars of the community in Placitas, with Cole serving on the town council and Willa helping to start a school for the local children. One day in the spring of that year, a stranger rode up to the ranch. He was a lawyer from Santa Fe, and he had news about Willa's father's estate. Apparently, Thomas Porter had owned a small piece of land in Colorado that he had won in a card game and then forgotten about. With his death and the absence of any other heirs, the land now belonged to Willa. "I do not want it," Willa said immediately. "Sell it and donate whatever money it brings to the church in Santa Fe. I want nothing from him." The lawyer looked surprised but nodded. "As you wish, Mrs. Everett." After he left, Cole found Willa standing in the garden staring out at the mountains. He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. "I am fine," Willa said, leaning back against him. "It just reminded me of where I came from, what my life was supposed to be. If you had not stepped in that day, if you had not saved me, I would probably be dead by now, or wishing I was. But I did step in," Cole said. "And you are here with me, with our children. That other life never happened, Willa. This is your life, the only one that matters." "I know," Willa said, turning to face him. "And I am so grateful for every single day. I love you so much, Cole. Thank you for giving me the world." "You are my world," Cole said simply, and kissed her there in the garden with the sun shining down and the smell of flowers in the air. The children grew older, and the ranch continued to thrive. By the early 1890s, Jamie was helping run the operation alongside his father, and Katie had become an accomplished rider who could rope a steer as well as any of the ranch hands. Sam had developed an interest in animal medicine and talked about becoming a veterinarian someday. Lily, though still young, showed signs of being as strong-willed as her mother. Cole and Willa had aged gracefully, their hair showing streaks of gray but their love as strong as ever. They still sat on the porch every evening, still held hands when they walked, still looked at each other like they were the most important person in the world. One evening in the fall of 1893, when the air was crisp and the leaves on the few trees around the ranch had turned gold, the whole family gathered for supper. It was a rowdy affair, with the children now ranging from 16-year-old Jamie down to 8-year-old Lily. They talked and laughed and argued good-naturedly, and Willa looked around the table feeling more content than she had ever imagined possible. After supper, while the children cleaned up, Cole pulled Willa aside. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small wooden box beautifully carved with intricate designs. "What is this?" Willa asked, taking the box. "Open it," Cole said, smiling. Inside was a locket, gold and delicate, with an engraving on the back that read "Forever and Always." Willa opened it and found 2 tiny photographs inside, one of her and Cole on their wedding day and one of all 6 of them together as a family. "Cole, this is beautiful," Willa said, tears streaming down her face. "When did you have this made?" "I have been working on it for months," Cole said. "I wanted to give you something that showed how much you mean to me, how much our family means to me. You took a broken man and gave him purpose, Willa. You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," Willa corrected, echoing the words they had said so many times over the years. She held out the locket. "Will you put it on me?" Cole fastened the locket around her neck, and Willa touched it with her fingers, feeling the warmth of the metal and the love that had gone into its creation. "Thank you," she said. "I will treasure this always." That night, as they lay in bed, Willa thought about the long, strange journey that had brought her to this moment. She had been sold like property, had felt worthless and afraid, had believed her life was over. But then Cole had appeared, this cowboy with kind eyes and a generous heart, and he had given her something she had never expected. Freedom. Freedom to choose her own path, to fall in love, to build a life on her own terms. And in giving her that freedom, he had also given her his last name, making her his partner and equal. Together, they had created something beautiful, a family and a legacy that would outlast them both. "What are you thinking about?" Cole murmured sleepily beside her. "About us," Willa said. "About how a terrible day turned into the best thing that ever happened to me, about how much I love you." "I love you too," Cole said, pulling her close. "Today, tomorrow, and forever. You are my heart, Willa Everett." "And you are mine," Willa whispered, and fell asleep in the arms of the man who had saved her and loved her and given her a life beyond her wildest dreams. The years continued their steady march forward. Jamie married a sweet girl from town named Sarah, and they built a house on the edge of the Everett property. They gave Cole and Willa their first grandchild in 1895, a boy named Cole Jr., and watching her husband hold his grandson for the first time, Willa saw tears in his eyes. Katie remained unmarried well into her 20s, declaring that she had not yet met a man who could keep up with her. She worked the ranch alongside her father and brother, earning the respect of everyone who knew her. Sam went off to veterinary school in 1896, making the family proud, and Lily grew into a beautiful young woman with her mother's kind heart. Cole and Willa grew older but not less in love. They celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary in 1897 with a big party that the whole town attended. There were speeches and toasts, and Cole stood up in front of everyone and told the story of how they met, how he had traded supplies and a rifle for the woman who would become his whole world. People ask me all the time if I regret paying so much for Willa that day, Cole said, his arm around his wife's waist. And I tell them the same thing every time. Best investment I ever made. She has given me 20 years of happiness, 4 incredible children, and now grandchildren too. She has made me a better man, a better father, a better everything. I would have paid 100 times what I did and still gotten the bargain of a lifetime. Willa wiped tears from her eyes as everyone applauded, and then Cole kissed her in front of the whole crowd, not caring who saw. As the new century approached, the Everett Ranch was more successful than ever. Jamie was effectively running it now, with Cole serving more as an advisor, and the operation had expanded to include not just cattle but also horses that were in high demand throughout the territory. New Mexico was on the verge of statehood, and there was an excitement in the air about the future. On New Year's Eve of 1899, the whole family gathered at the ranch to welcome the new century. All the children were there, plus Sarah and little Cole Jr., plus Frank and Daniel, who were now elderly but still part of the family. They stood outside as midnight approached, watching the sky. "A new century," Cole said, holding Willa close. "Can you believe it? When I think about where we were 23 years ago and where we are now, it seems impossible." "Nothing is impossible," Willa said. "We proved that. We took the worst circumstances and turned them into something beautiful. We built a life and a family and a legacy, and we did it together." As the clock struck midnight, everyone cheered and embraced. Jamie kissed his wife, Katie hugged her siblings, and Sam lifted Lily off her feet and spun her around. Frank and Daniel clinked their glasses of whiskey and talked about all the years they had seen. But Cole and Willa only had eyes for each other. They kissed as the new century began, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something that would last long after they were gone. "Happy New Century, Mrs. Everett," Cole said softly. "Happy New Century, Mr. Everett," Willa replied. "Here is to 100 more years of the Everett family." "I will drink to that," Cole said, and they toasted under the stars, surrounded by the people they loved most in the world. The new century brought changes, as all times do. Katie finally met her match in 1902, a tough-as-nails horse trainer named Marcus, who saw her strength and loved her for it. They married in a ceremony on the ranch, and Katie proved to be just as strong a wife as she had been a daughter and sister. Sam returned from veterinary school and set up a practice in Placitas, treating not just ranch animals but also beloved pets, and even wildlife when people brought in injured creatures. He married a fellow veterinarian in 1904, a smart woman named Elizabeth who matched his gentle nature perfectly. Lily was the last to marry, finding love with a teacher from Santa Fe named Daniel, not to be confused with Daniel the ranch hand. They had a small ceremony in 1905, and Lily moved to Santa Fe to help her husband run a school for children from all backgrounds. Cole and Willa became grandparents many times over, with children and grandchildren filling the ranch house for every holiday and special occasion. The noise and chaos that had once been from their own children was now from the next generation, and both Cole and Willa loved every minute of it. In 1906, on their 29th wedding anniversary, Cole and Willa took a rare trip alone, riding out to a spot in the hills where they could see the whole ranch spread out below them. They were in their 50s now, both showing the wear of a hard life, but they were still healthy and strong. "I have been thinking," Cole said as they sat on a blanket sharing a picnic lunch, "about what comes next, about what happens when we are gone." "Cole Everett, do not talk like that," Willa scolded gently. "We have plenty of years left." I know," Cole said with a smile. "But I want to make sure you know. Everything I have, everything we built together, it all belongs to you and the children. The ranch will be divided equally among Jamie, Katie, Sam, and Lily. They can decide together how to run it, or they can each take their portion and do as they please. But this land, this legacy, it is theirs. They know that, Willa said. You have raised them to understand the value of what we have built here. They will honor it and preserve it. I want to do one more thing, Cole said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a legal document. I had this drawn up. It puts the ranch in both our names, officially and legally. If anything happens to me, you will have full ownership and control. No one can take this away from you, ever. You will never be powerless again, Willa. I promise you that. Willa felt tears stream down her face as she looked at the document. Even after all these years, Cole was still protecting her, still making sure she would be safe and secure. You are a good man, Cole Everett, she said, her voice thick with emotion. The best man I have ever known. I am just a man who loves his wife, Cole said, pulling her close. Nothing more, nothing less. They sat there for hours, watching the sun move across the sky, talking about their life together and all the memories they had made. It was a perfect day, one of many they had shared, and both of them were grateful for every single moment. The years moved on, bringing joy and sorrow in equal measure. Frank passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1908, and the whole family mourned him like the uncle he had been. Daniel the ranch hand followed a year later, and they buried both men on the ranch, with headstones that honored their service and friendship. More grandchildren were born, and the family tree grew thick and sprawling. Cole and Willa moved into a smaller house on the property, leaving the main house to Jamie and his growing family. But they were still involved in the ranch operations and still held a place of honor in the family. In the fall of 1911, as they celebrated their 34th wedding anniversary, Cole and Willa sat on the porch of their small house, holding hands and watching another sunset. They were both 60 now, gray-haired and weathered, but their love had not diminished one bit. Do you ever regret it? Willa asked suddenly. Paying so much for me that day, taking on the responsibility of a wife and then a family. Cole turned to look at her, his blue eyes still as bright as they had been when he was a young man. Not for one single second, he said firmly. You were not a responsibility, Willa. You were a gift. The best gift I ever received. Everything good in my life came from that decision to step in and help you. Our children, our grandchildren, this ranch, this life. All of it came from you. We built it together, Willa said, as she always did. We built it together, Cole agreed. And I would do it all over again in a heartbeat. I love you, Willa Everett. I have loved you from the moment I saw you trying so hard to be brave in the face of something terrible. And I will love you until the day I die and beyond. Forever and always, Willa said, touching the locket that still hung around her neck, worn smooth from years of wearing. Forever and always, Cole echoed. They sat there as the sun disappeared below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red and purple. Around them, the ranch that they had built hummed with life, their children and grandchildren carrying on the legacy they had started. Willa thought about that day 35 years ago when her father had traded her for supplies and a rifle, when she had felt worthless and afraid. She thought about Cole stepping in, this cowboy with kind eyes and a generous heart, giving her freedom when she had none and his last name when she had nothing else. She thought about all the years since, all the love and laughter and tears. She thought about their children and grandchildren, about the life they had built from nothing. And she thought about the man sitting beside her, still holding her hand after all these years, still looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Thank you, she said softly. For what? Cole asked. For seeing me, Willa said. For loving me, for giving me this life. Cole raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for taking a chance on me. Thank you for every day we have had together." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Cole and Willa Everett sat together on their porch, two people who had found each other against all odds and created something beautiful. Their love story would be told and retold by their descendants for generations to come. A tale of courage and kindness, of a man who gave a woman her freedom and his last name, and of the incredible life they built together. The ranch would continue long after they were gone, run by their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The Everett name would become synonymous with integrity and hard work in New Mexico. And at the heart of it all would be this story of a cowboy and the woman he saved, who saved him right back, and the legacy of love they left behind. Years later, when Cole and Willa were both long gone, their great-grandchildren would find that wooden box with the locket inside, still engraved with "Forever and Always." They would tell the story of how their great-grandmother had been traded for supplies and a rifle, and how their great-grandfather had given her freedom and his last name. They would tell it with pride, knowing that they came from people who had faced hardship and chosen love, who had built something lasting from the most unlikely beginning. But on this night, in the fall of 1911, Cole and Willa did not know about all that would come after. They only knew about the present moment, about the warmth of each other's hands and the peace of a life well lived. They sat together as they had so many times before, watching the stars appear one by one, grateful for every day they had been given, every moment they had shared. And as the night deepened and the air grew cool, they went inside together, still hand in hand after 34 years of marriage. They climbed into bed, held each other close, and fell asleep with smiles on their faces, dreaming of all the tomorrows still to come. Because that is what their love had given them, not just the promise of forever, but the reality of it. A forever built on respect and partnership, on freedom and choice, on the simple but profound truth that they were better together than they could ever be apart. She had been traded for supplies and a rifle, treated as property to be bought and sold. But the cowboy had given her freedom and his last name, and together they had created a love story for the ages. A story that proved that even in the hardest circumstances, even when the world seemed cruel and unforgiving, love could still triumph. Hope could still prevail. And two people could still find each other and build something beautiful that would last forever and always.